Hi everybody, good afternoon. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Amitai Freeman and I'm very excited to introduce this panel. Before we do, I'd like to take a moment just to think about this incredible day. I know for me as an Israeli and an American, it's wonderful to see so many people from Israel, from America, from the European communities. It's just very, very special. And before we start, just a few things. As you know, please keep your phones on silent so we don't interrupt this. The second thing is we're going to have a Q&A at the end of the session. Let's keep it to be questions and answers. So less statements, more questions. We can learn more from our wonderful panelists. And lastly, I wanted to say that after this event, we're going to have a special closing plenary. We're going to have some songs from the Maccabees. It's a really great time, so we want to invite you to join us after this session. So when I signed up for this session too, Retro Tech, and the first thing that came to mind when I did was the famous saying by Ladon, which goes, when a people does not honor its past, it lives in a present of little substance and faces a future clouded in doubt. And really, to me, that is what this session is about, to kind of look at our texts, our ancient texts, and kind of gain some perspective, some insight, and some inspiration for what the future of our people could look like. So really, with that, I want to welcome you to the last session of the day, Retro Tech, Reuniting the Tribe, Jewish Texts in the 21st Century. The 21st Century Zionism. And so let's jump right into it and introduce our wonderful panelists. So we have so many papers and stuff. Yeah, okay. So we have Rabbi Joshua Ladon, the West Coast Director of the Education of the Shalom Hartman Institute in North America, where he oversees educational and programmatic activity in the San Francisco Bay Area. We have Rabbi Adam Mintz, he's a rabbi of Keilat Re'im Ahuvim, a west side in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and he's the director of the 929 English, a web-based project that promotes a daily study of a chapter of the Tanakh and provides an opportunity for English-speaking Jewry around the world to engage in a conversation centered around the daily chapter. That's their thing. We have Tova Birnbaum, director of the Jewish content at the Oshman Family JCC in Palo Alto. You know Tova, so that's wonderful. And this panel will be moderated by Rabbi Darren Kleinberg. He's the head of Keilah School here, and he is the author of the book Hybrid Judaism, Irving Greenberg Encounter and the Changing Nature of the American Jewish Identity. So thank you for joining us, and I'll turn over to Rabbi Kleinberg.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Just a couple of things, and I want to get really to our panelists as soon as possible. But first, seeing as we are going to engage in some Torah study, I want to invite everybody to join me in a blessing for Torah study. I'll recite it in English. I'll recite it in Hebrew first, and then I'll translate it. And if you are in agreement, you can say Amen. You also, by the way, can express your agreement by remaining silent, because as we know, shtika kahoda adami, that silence is like agreement. And if you're in disagreement, that's fine too. You can excuse yourself from the blessing mentally. It's up to you, but I'm going to offer the blessing that we offer over the study of Torah. If you know the words, you please feel free to join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. Blessed is Adonai, the was, the is, the will be, this whole thing that we inexplicably appear to be inside of, that thing that keeps this all going, that has given us the sacred obligation, the sacred opportunity to be engaged in words of Torah. So for our panel today, our esteemed scholars here on the panel, two of whom are teachers of mine, Tova and Josh, and the third, Adam, is a teacher of my brothers in England, so I get it by that connection, are going to present each a kind of a single text as a way to share their thinking about what our Jewish texts can teach us about contemporary Zionism. I offered two very simple guidelines for the conversation, and that is that the text be bite-sized, so that we have enough time for a dialogue amongst the panelists and also for questions from the group, and that it be ancient. My definition of an ancient text is it has to have been written before you were born. That's the definition. Having already seen the texts that they'll be teaching, there's no problem on either count. And so with that, at this point, I'm going to pause. I'm going to hand the floor over to Tova to offer her text, and then Josh, and then Adam. I'll ask a question or two afterwards, and then we'll open it up for a dialogue. Okay, Tova, please.
Thank you. This is really an honor to be here and teach Torah, especially, look, I'm surrounded by rabbis, and I'm saying it not only for the joke, because really my relationship with text and Torah study really goes back to me thinking that this is not for me to read. I'm going to share a piece of Talmud from Brachot. So I grew up very religious, but the doors of Torah was almost closed for me. I learned a lot of Tanakh and a lot of practical halakha, basically. And when I discovered a huge world of Talmud and Rishonim and Anachronim and also Zionist thinkers, that really changed who I was. That was like 20 years ago. So Torah study, and we're going to talk about Zionism in the 21st century and the relationship between diaspora and Israel. I think text study and who learns text and how they learn the text and what counts as a text, what counts as Torah, those three things are really part of that conversation. Who owns the heritage and where is the center? So, yes.
Good.
Wow, great. So I actually want to hand it out. We're going to read it, part of it, not all of it. I'm really scared of Darren here because he said we have to be very short. Not to?
חשבתי, לא?
Wait, I don't know. But
בסדר.
so what we'll do, we'll just read 2 paragraphs. You have the one. This is from Tractate Brachot. Can someone read the 2 first paragraphs in English, please?
Rav Safra said, Rabbi Abadu believed when Benini, son of Rabbi Yechieli-Persico's brother, went to the diaspora, he would intercalate years and establish months outside of Eretz Yisrael. The sages of Eretz Yisrael sent 2 Torah scholars after him, Rabbi Yosef ben Kefar and the grandson of Zechariah ben Kehutal. When Benini saw them, he asked them, "Why did you come?" They responded, "We came to study Torah." He proclaimed about them, "These people are eminent scholars of our generation, and their fathers served in the temple." As we learn in Tractate Yoma, Zechariah ben Kehutal says, "Many times I read before the high priest from the book of Daniel. He ruled impure and they ruled pure. He prohibited and they permitted. Eventually he proclaimed about them, 'These people are worthless, they are good for nothing.' They said to him, 'You have already built, you cannot now demolish. You have already built a fence and you cannot break through it.' He said to them, 'Why is it that when I rule impure, you rule pure? When I prohibit, you permit?' They said to him, 'Because you intercalate the years and establish the months outside of Eretz Yisrael.'"
Okay. So many times when I think about Zionism in the 21st century, especially living in America, living outside of Zion, and being a Jewish leader here in this community, I think about this, about Bavel and Yerushalayim. That's really a go-to right away when you want to go back to our story and our history and think about where did we face similar situations, and we did. And we actually faced much more harsh and ugly disputes between Israel and the diaspora, even uglier than what we sometimes experience here. Unfortunately, we experience some not very pleasant interactions between Israel and especially North American Jewry. But if you go back, you get some perspective because things used to be even worse. So I don't know. I mean, really, I don't know if that's creates optimism, but it says that things can get better if your heart is in the right place. So basically, my main thing that I want to say about this text is about a vibrant diaspora, and whether Israel, the center, or Israel who thinks about itself as a center, is really appreciating a vibrant diaspora. Here in this text, it's about authority. It's about who decides how the Jewish calendar would look like, who decides when we are going to celebrate the different holidays, and who has the authority to actually create halakha. And we see here each part of this conversation, each community feels that the other community is a threat. So the vibrancy and the flourishing of the other community is a threat. And, you know, we don't need a lot to say when we read this text, and we see how we can learn so much from that. So I can share, I started sharing that me encountering text and encountering the world of Torah that really shaped who I am thanking American Jewry for that. I grew up very religious, but my Jewish identity journey started when I was 19, and I went to Los Angeles to live for a year in a Jewish community, and that changed me. I came back after a year. My parents regretted sending me. But the only thing that I encountered in Los Angeles is just a more liberal Orthodox community than the one I grew up in. That's just a little pick of the fact that there are other ways to be Jewish. And as an Israeli, he grew up thinking there is only one way of being Jewish. And opening a text one day, and me, when I opened the text when I was 18, this text would not go, because where are the commentaries? You don't read anything that has nothing. You are not an interpreter. You go right away to see what what the commentaries have to say about that. So the first time when I was in a Torah study and someone asked me, "What do you think?" the earth shook for me. That was a moment that everything changed. That someone actually asked me, "What do you think?" Before we jump to Rashi, before we jump to Radak or any of the commentaries, what do you think? Does this have any relevance to your life? And I talk about that because Zionism 21st century, for me, is a relationship between Israel and the diaspora that can really, really genuinely help both sides flourish. Flourish meaning creative Judaism. And creative Judaism, for me growing up, it was an oxymoron. There is no such thing as creative Judaism. Judaism has only one way of existing. So this is basically my wish for us to actually acknowledge that others' creativity is our blessing.
Thank you. But before, yes, applause. Just before we go to Josh, I want to welcome Yael, Yechieli-Persico, former director of the Department of Democracy at the New Israel Fund. We're so happy to have you on our panel. Josh, please.
So it's hard to follow Tova. I'll just say, when Darren asked us to present a text, I was like, well, I don't want to present a text because my concern is not the actual text, it's the how of the encountering the text. And thinking about that sort of there are two prominent trends in, I'll present a text. But just thinking about if I'm given the opportunity, I might as well teach the talk. But there are two, I think, like prominent voices that emerge around textuality in the 20th and 21st century, which is on one hand, it's an encounter with the other. And we hear that over and over again in a lot of hermeneutic and philosophical, and it's an encounter with the other. And that's what Tova was saying, right? We can read a text and we can encounter the other, and our world can be expanded. And what we've also heard is the loss of a tradition that is a home-based tradition, something you learn from your family, mimetic, right? Something that actually, and the reliance on the word of the book, the reliance on the text, has cultivated a new fanaticism. And there are, one example I'll just offer, not to equate fanaticism with this, but like, is there's a great part of Gershom Gorenberg's book, The Accidental Empire, in which he roots part of the decisions about expansion into the area that was Jordan before 67, that became the West Bank, occupied territories, Yehuda and Shomron, choose your term, was not out of a religious sensibility, it was out of a secular Israeli commitment to Tanakh study. So I just want to point out those two sort of confluences of there's a romantic nature of the text that feeds my identity, and there's an encounter with the other. So for me, I can't learn like I'm like I come from the opposite place that Tova comes from. We've talked a little bit of this. I grew up as like the reform kid who went to Jewish day school, and now I belong sort of reluctantly to a modern Orthodox shul. My reluctance is demonstrated in that I'm now on the board. So I'm the person who can't study a text without having it in conversation with another text. For me, it has to be multiple texts that make me say it. So I'll bring a text from the Ramban, Nachmanides, but the other text I want in the back of our mind is Heschel's The Sabbath. Because Heschel's The Sabbath, for me, is the epitome of American religiosity. Not Judaism. It's American religiosity. And when I shared that with a bunch of Christian clergy a few weeks, like a month or two ago, they were like, oh yeah, this is our, which is to say we cultivate sacred space and time by coming together. That sacredness emerges out of our own existential cultivation. Right, he says the Sabbath is a palace in time, and we have to make this, right? So, which, by the way, there's this great, probably anachronistic story that when Heschel went to Israel in the 50s, and Gershom Scholem, the then great scholar of Kabbalah and mysticism at Hebrew University, would not let him lecture at Hebrew University. He had to go lecture at Tel Aviv University because Scholem read the Sabbath as an anti-Zionist text. Now I want to hold that because I think for me, I don't understand a Judaism outside of Heschel's Sabbath. Meaning, I understand it exists, but for me it's so central that we come to, I'm a camp kid, right? We come, and we're going to play guitar, and we're going to sing songs, and we're going to make this space holy together. After Yaakov has his dream with the ladders, so he makes this statement, Vayidar Yaakov neder lemor imi Elohim imadi, right? Jacob then made a vow saying, if God remains with me, if he protects me on this journey that I'm making and gives me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and if I return safe to my father's house, the Lord shall be my God, right? So this is like an interesting line. Rashi picks up, wait a minute, what is this like? He's making a neder? Like he's making a vow, a condition? Like I thought this was about like God is gonna make, right? So Ramban says, no, it's not about a neder. When he says at the end, right, that God will be my God, right? When he says that at the end, what he's saying is, because I'm going to come back to this stone, which is Har Habayit, right? Which becomes the place which becomes the temple. That is why God will be my God, because I'm going to be in the land of Israel. And Ramban says, there is no God for the Jewish people outside the land of Israel. God does not dwell outside the land of Israel. And for me, that notion is a deep encounter with another type of voice in the Jewish world that I don't regularly encounter. And then you start to investigate, and you're like, oh, well, this isn't just Ramban. It's in the Gemara. It's in a different part of the Talmud. It's the Kuzari, right? It's Yehuda Levi, right? And it comes down. There's a really powerful quotation by Tzvi Yehuda Kook, the younger Kook, not the first, chief Ashkenazi rabbi of pre-state Israel, but his son, who says every inch of the land is holy, and I can't, you can't extract, you can't step back from it. So I bring that up to say I'm used to the Heschelian. I have a language for existential Judaism where we cultivate the other. I can understand intellectually the existence of this other tradition, but I don't have a lived experience of this other tradition. But it's real, and it's vibrant in the state of Israel. And so what does learning Torah do for me? On one hand, it makes me realize there's this other voice that I have to take seriously. And I certainly need to take it seriously when I'm thinking about who I'm encountering, when I think about wherever I fall on the pole, whatever my Pesach, really when I go to my wife's family in Israel, Pesach, and let's just say there are political conversations, right? Like I have to understand that theology. But that might not lead to the type of Z3 revolution that is at the end of the story. So I'm struggling with what it means to learn Torah as ultimately this. Maybe it can be pluralist. Great, it doesn't have to be pluralist. And so the how is really
Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for coming. I'm going to break a little bit of the rule, and that is that I am going to present a text other than the text that I emailed that I was going to present. But I have to apologize to Darren. But this text still falls into the category of having been written long before I was born. And actually, the text I want to discuss is a text that, in a way, discusses the same thing that Tova discussed. And that's the idea of points of entry, of access to the tradition. And the text I want to choose is the 16th chapter of the book of Vayikra, of Leviticus. Now, you may say, of all the texts, why did I choose that text? Believe it or not, there's a reason. So I am the director of a new project that began this summer called 929 English. Shira is the director of education. And what we've done is that we've created a web-based project in which we encourage the study of a chapter of the Jewish Bible of Tanakh every single day. And we started on July 15th. We're on about the 108th chapter from the beginning, and that happens to be Vayikra, chapter 16. And the amazing thing is, yeah, that's it. Thank goodness it worked out. No, actually, that's the point. The point is that the beauty of our tradition is that there's such relevance in every chapter. You just have to find it. I want to read just the very beginning of chapter 16. I love reading it in Hebrew and then translating it, even if you don't understand, the words are so beautiful. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe, and God spoke to Moshe. Acharei mot shnei bnei Aharon, following the deaths of the two sons of Aaron. Bekarvatam lifnei Adonai vayamutu. When they came too close to God, and they died. This is the Torah reading for Yom Kippur morning. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, and God said to Moses, Daber el Aharon achicha. Speak to your brother Aaron, the high priest. Ve'al yavo bechol eit el hakodesh mi beit la parochet. Do not come into the holy at all times. El pnei hakaporet asher al haaron v'lo yamut. Says, don't come close to the ark, to the tablets, which were in the Holy of Holies. Ki be'anan eira'el hakaporet. Because I, God, appear upon this ark. Bizot yavo Aharon el hakodesh. With this, Aaron is allowed to enter the holy. And then the Torah goes on to describe an extremely intricate process by which Aaron was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies. This process, interestingly, was followed by the high priest every single Yom Kippur. But Aaron, the very first high priest, the permission for him to enter the Holy of Holies was not limited to Yom Kippur. But as long as he followed this procedure, he could enter anytime he wanted. What I want to talk about is this idea that God says to Moshe to speak to his brother, Ve'al yavo b'chol eit el hakodesh. You are not allowed to enter the holy whenever you want. Rather, bizot yavo aharon el hakodesh. And this is really what Tova talked about. And this is the idea of access. In a sense, tradition, texts are available to all of us whenever we want. We pick it up, right? Doesn't matter what language, in today's world, doesn't matter what language you want. You can have the Tanakh in English and Hebrew and Russian and French and all the different languages. And even the Talmud is in all these different languages. And there's no book that Art Scroll is not one step ahead of us on in terms of translating it. So everything is accessible. But at the same time, God says to Moshe to say to Aharon, V'al yavo b'chol eit el hakodesh. You have to be sensitive to what your access point is going to be. How do you enter the tradition? And that, in our lives, and this was really, I love that story, Tova, you told about the fact that you had several entry points in the tradition. You had the first 18 years of your life. That was an entry point. It means you're totally involved in the tradition, but it's an entry point in which you're studying the tradition and you're just a spectator, right? You're sitting in the bleachers while the text is being studied. And then you have a new entry point that, in which you're asked, what does it mean to you? But what's fascinating is, you have to wonder, had you been asked when you were 5 years old, what does this text mean to you? You know what maybe, you might have said, I don't want that. I'd rather be a spectator. Means what your entry point is has to do with bizot yavo aharon el hakodesh. It has to do with preparation. It has to do with what our life experience is. And my idea that I want to share, and it's really the idea about Zionism in the 21st century and what our point of access is. And in the opening plenary we heard, the challenge is, and this is really what Rabbi Sachs actually is the international president of 929. Somehow it all comes back to 929. Rabbi Sachs gave a charge and he said, this is a new era in terms of how we look at Zionism. And that is, what's our point of entry? And I think that tension between there's access all the time, but be careful, is something that we live as Jews, and I think it makes the experience of text study and the experience just of our engagement with Judaism so much richer.
I'm glad to be here. I'll tell first thing about myself. I used to be part of Batei Midrash, studying and teaching and learning and saying, oh, look how lovely this Judaism. And in Israel, And mostly I teach non-religious people in youth movements and pre-army programs. And teaching them, they don't know Judaism because in Israel, if you are not religious, you learn, you don't learn so much Judaism. And I was like, wow, look, this is so nice, this Judaism. And on that time, I started to be an activist. And I saw that what's happening when Judaism and politics go together, and in Israel, that I got so mad about Judaism. Because Judaism in Israel is, you can look at the chief rabbis of Israel, One of the former one is sitting in jail now, there's two, one Ashkenazi and one Sephardi, they don't talk to each other because of political situation. And I said, this is Judaism? If this is Judaism, I give up. I don't need, I found myself fighting the Judaism in Israel, although I'm very Jewish and I'm very religiously, my life is very religiously, but I hate the Judaism in Israel. And I know what I'm saying is very hard. But it's for me, because the Jewish aspect in Israel is so ultra-Orthodox and so chauvinist and so like everything that I believe Judaism is not. So it's interesting for me to sit here and talk about text because I didn't do it for the last few years. And the text I chose is a text from Numbers 27, and I'll tell you the text in 1 minute. But it said, then the Lord said to Moses, go up this mountain in the Abarim range and see the land I have given the Israelis. This is what happened after this story. I'll tell you the story. But that if we'll go with this message, and I'll say again, this is the message we should go to an Israeli or to a Zionist state, that would be great. It didn't happen, okay? Because the story is about the 5 daughters of Tzlofchad, okay? And this is the last story before God says to Moses, okay, go send bye-bye. Okay, this is the last thing he did as a leader. Okay, and these 5 girls of Tzlofchad, and they have they have their names there. And it's interesting why they have to be 5 girls to do this movement. And they come to Moses and they say, we do want also to have a land. Okay, and to think about it, like 3,000 years ago, that woman will say, I want a land. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, woman doesn't have a land. You get married, and then you have the land of your husband. Like, the woman doesn't own a land. And he can tell them, Moses there's nothing like woman and a land. It doesn't go, and that's it. But he says, okay, I don't know what to do. And what does he do? Goes to ask the God. Okay, he has this privilege to ask him. Okay, and he asked him. And again, I'm thinking about today's rabbis or the rabbis I grew up with. And if one of us will ask one of these questions, the answer would be, there's no way a woman cannot own a land. Okay, that's because why? Because God said. Okay, not because of us, it's because God. But he has the privilege to ask God. And what God tells him, yeah, in Hebrew it is so nice. He says, Ken bnot Tzlofchad dovot. Like, yes, they are right. Okay? And when I'm thinking about this, it's like, what would happen if these 5 girls will not ask this question? Okay? The only thing that changed the Torah is because these 5 girls, that they were sisters and they were the sisterhood, coming to Moshe and coming to the priest and saying, we want also to have this privilege of having our land. And if they would not have asked for that, and all the law is changing, that's what it says in this paragraph. The law is changing, saying that if a man has only girls, although, of course, if he has boys, the land is going to boys. But if he has only girls, so you should know that this is the new law. That whoever changed the law is these 5 girls, okay? And I'm asking, like, God, why didn't you think about it yourself? Okay? Why did God need these 5 girls coming and say, what about us? And this is my mission. This is my dream about what will Judaism be. Judaism say, wow, there is a problem. The problem is here on earth, okay? And the problem is like that, like women cannot get a land. It's something that's saying that it's not right, okay? Something is bad in the earth, and we want to change it and to make it better. And for that, we need people to do that. And to but we don't have this God. Oh, well, some of us, but like that, we can ask him, God, can we change the law? Like today, we use the law only to say, okay, we're sorry, woman. And again, in the diaspora, it's not like that. But where I grew up, like I didn't see a Torah till I was 25. Like I didn't see. I heard, I knew that there is, but I didn't see, because my brother could see because they had a bar mitzvah and but I couldn't, because in Israel, if you go to a shul, you sit back. If you're a woman, you sit behind the mechitza. Okay, so if Judaism will be, and if Zionism will be like taking the Judaism saying, let's make this world more justice. And this is what's happening, but that's the last thing Moshe is doing before he's going up. He's making the world more justice, okay, for women. But, like, so the dream that we'll have more Moses, like that, not saying I know the answer and the answer is no because God told me. It's like, I don't know the answer and I'm going to ask God, and God said, oh, they know the answers. They're like the people in the ground.
Sort of justice comes to a question.
Yeah.
First, I want to invite everyone just to take a moment and reflect on the extraordinary depth of Torah that was just shared. I mean, really, something special just happened here. Thank you to each of you for very powerful teachings. Very powerful teachings. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say some things. They may or may not come out as questions, and then each or any of you may respond or not respond. And then depending on how that goes and how long it takes after that, we'll open it up to the folks that are sitting here. So I hope that's okay. So once again, just gratitude, first of all. I just appreciate the depth of the teaching. But the thing that stuck with me in each of your comments was that, I constantly am drawn to Marshall McLuhan's famous line that the medium is the message, that even more than the particular text that you chose, both the manner in which you shared the teaching, but maybe for the purposes of what I'm reflecting on, the methodology that you employed may be the greatest takeaway for the question of, like, what will this next iteration of Zionism look like? Does the wisdom tradition of Judaism have anything to contribute to it? It seems to me that there was a kind of a through line of methodology that each of you presented that seems, in each case, profoundly relevant and maybe even desperately needed at this moment in the conversation around Zionism. So let me offer in each of your cases. Tova, your comments centered around, in fact, the center was the key point, right? The question of who holds the power, and the recognition that our assumptions of who holds the power may not actually be accurate, or the power can be distributed in ways that we hadn't previously imagined. In your case, that a woman should have the opportunity to study Talmud. It seems to me that in conversations about Israel and about Zionism, there's an important conversation to be had about who holds the power, who holds the center, who gets to decide what the terms of the conversation are, who gets to participate, what is acceptable to be said. And it seems to me you kind of pointed a direction for a more expansive view, or maybe even a diffusion of power in general, that maybe what we're trying to move away from in this next iteration is maybe an undermining of power, that the power itself is the problem. Josh, what I heard in your comments was a really powerful statement about the importance of discourse, right? The discursive method. So even as you couldn't personally identify with a particular orientation, as you said yourself, but you were willing to be open to it, to hear it, to try to gain some understanding of it. To my mind, how desperately is that needed in conversations about Israel and about Zionism? These days, there is a great absence of discourse, and there are bright red lines drawn around and away from the things that are acceptable to be said from whichever particular position of power you might inhabit. And so that seemed like also an important methodology for thinking about the conversation about Israel and Zionism moving forward. Adam, the question about access is so central. And I was moved by your comment that, not every person at every moment has the same quality of contribution to make. Ve'al yavo b'chol eit, the humility to recognize that we may not know as much about a given thing, and our opportunity and responsibility is to learn. And by the way, that's when it comes to Israel and Zionism, that probably applies to everybody sitting in the circle around this conversation. So I found that to be profoundly important. And then Yael, I heard two things in what you said. The first was, yeah, you're right. I mean, Moshe, you know, as so many people who like to think of themselves as Moshes could have said, no, Zak the Gemara, the Halacha said, whatever the answer is, right? This is the rule, and the answer is no. But what I heard from you was consider any possibility, even the thing that we think is not allowed. Maybe it is allowed, right? And then, of course, the central maybe trope of the Jewish self-narrative, right? Ask questions. Feel free to ask questions. So it seems to me that these four qualities, I mean, you could build a mission statement. You could develop a methodology around a conversation, and by the way, not just about Israel and Zionism, probably about everything in your life. If we committed ourselves to decentralizing power, to engaging in discourse, to recognizing that we need to open access, but also have the humility to know when it's time to or not to open our mouths, to consider any possibility and to always feel like we should and can ask questions, then there's no doubt that tomorrow's story of Israel and Zionism will be a better one than today's, and certainly than yesterday's. And so that's what I heard. And I wonder if any of you have anything to say about that.
I actually have a thought to share about what you said, Adam. And I admit that for me it like hits a button, right? If someone says, you have to know when you could speak, for me it's like something, you know, I have this automatic reaction. But I think it's a really interesting point. Who has the right or the entitlement to be part of the conversation? And that's both about the conversation going on in Israel on what is a Jewish and democratic state. And unfortunately, big parts of the community is not part of the conversation from different reasons. And it would have been a very different Jewish and democratic state if we had more voices. And a lot of those voices are not heard because they are told that they don't know enough or they're not in the right access point. So I would question that. And also, when I used to be, my previous job, I used to be the central shlicha for the World Zionist Organization for North America. And I used to work with students all the time, with college students. And I got this question all the time. Am I entitled to say something about what's happening in Israel? And at that point, when I got that question, I wasn't a shlicha anymore, I was Tova. And I said, okay, right now, the shlicha hat is going off, I'm Tova now. And I used to say, not only that you can say something, it is your responsibility. It's not an entitlement, it's a responsibility. But then the next question was, and that for me, it really touched me whenever I had these conversations with young people, but I don't know enough. I don't know enough the Zionist story. I don't know enough about the establishment of the State of Israel. I don't know enough about the Arab-Israeli conflict. I don't know enough. And for me, and I think a lot of people would disagree with me, but that is my thing. Also when I teach Torah, my favorite groups are groups who are, you know, when I wanted to learn Talmud, I was told, wait. Have you learned Mishnah? Have you learned all the Tanakh? There is a hierarchy and there is a path. Someone decided what the path is, and those are the right steps. And for me, when I engage a group of people who want to learn, and it's almost like here is a text. You are here with fresh eyes. You are going to encounter this text from your perspective, from your world, from whatever knowledge that you have and that you bring into this conversation. This is pure Torah. And it doesn't matter if you learned all the Mishnah, please open a Talmud. It doesn't matter if you learned all Talmud, please open a Rambam. Please open a Mos Oz. Please open Bialik. Let's talk about women as well. Leah Goldberg, right? But think, having, it's a bad word, ignorant voices, it's a bad word. But I think that's part of the pure Torah that comes out. If you have unique perspectives, if you have, even if the knowledge is not complete, the value of input and understanding that different voices can bring in is just irreplaceable. So for me, again, it's for Torah study, and it's about discussion about Israel. I've never sent students to read a book. Okay, read that book, come back to me. Never. We are ready to discuss. Whatever you know, it's enough for a conversation, because what you feel and what you think has value to what we want to do together.
I think the word you were looking for was trigger. That the idea of being entitled, Val Yavo B'chol Eitel HaKodesh, so that for you is a trigger.
I grew up in Bnei Brak, right? So that's why.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a trigger, meaning that there's entitlement. You're not allowed. Val Yavo B'chol Eitel HaKodesh means you're not allowed. And what you're suggesting, Tova, is that don't ever say you're not allowed. So I accept that. I think that's the beauty of the evolution of this idea. It means obviously when the Torah describes it, it's talking about a completely different world, about Vayavo B'chol Eitel HaKodesh, a different kind of Kodesh. And what you're saying is that as that is applied to our world, there can never be a barrier. But let me fine tune it, as just you expect I was going to do. Say, I accept that. I think that's beautiful. There's no limit. There's no entitlement. But everybody needs to know what their point of access is going to be, and when that point of access is right. So, and I think that kind of can combine what we get from the story and from your experience.
Yael navigating. Yeah. I'll just say navigating an extra panelist is actually demonstrative of, I think, that one of the things that your idea spoke to me, if I can link the two statements, which is, I said to Darren as we were starting, there was a conversation we had many years ago in which I was saying to him, for me, learning Talmud, there is no better expression of Jewish creativity than the rabbinic tradition, and particularly the Gemara for me, as reflective of what seems unique to the Jewish people, meaning the Jews have other Jewish literatures look like literatures of other people, whereas the Talmud I was trying to make a claim as being more unique, and Darren pushed back on me. And I hold on to his critique really hard, I hold on to it well, and I've grown to be more expressive of a view that the Jewish tradition should be more broadly framed in creative ways. Now, I bring that up to say, if we're only going to Tanakh and Gemara for our wisdom for the retro tech, then we're leaving out huge swaths of voices of Jewish people. Whether it's the women's voice, whether as we move into modern Jewish philosophy, why are they all German and French speakers? So one of the questions that I'm really wrestling with is how do I both root the retro tech in which is the name of I'm using the name of the panel, right? The retro tech, the coming back to the tradition, and really want that project to be happening. I love studying text in this discursive way that illuminates it, and also take, I think, for me, the Judith Plaskow critique of the tradition of how do we make this tradition more fuller and the voices that are missing. And so how do we navigate those two tensions, which are really important to me? I put that in the framework of like taking care of kids, I guess. Was like that. So, yeah.
Okay, we're going to open up some questions. Yeah, please.
I appreciate the perspectives each of you brought to this. Tova, when you started talking about how there was just one authoritative discussion of a particular text, it seems to deny the perspective of Pardes and opening up a broader perspective, different voices, different times, different ways of looking at a text, or again, a phrase from Talmudic times of the ways to God are like a 70-faceted jewel. How can we try to assert there's only one single approach? And one of the things we struggled with, I think, in Reconstructionist Judaism, I'll get to my question here, is the importance of moving from whether it's services or classes to a participatory environment, as opposed to it being performative, where you have the rabbi, the cantor, the educator telling the people, this is how it is. As moderns, we should realize you can't engage people that way. You've got to bring them into the conversation, open it up.
So the question is?
The question is, how do we do that more effectively with regard to Israel?
You want to take a shot at that? Well, I'll just say that.
Darren probably does it more than anyone else.
I would just say that I think that today's gathering is actually an extraordinary example of how to do that. I mean, each year this conference has invited a broader diversity of voices. Each year it has deepened the nature of the conversation. This year, as I understand it, there's a hope to turn this into a larger movement or an item of philosophy or something. So I would say stay tuned. I think that's how we do it. And then figure out how you can get involved, volunteer, write a check, do the things that you need to do, and figure out how you can support the efforts.
I'll just offer one thing, which I think 929 is doing, is your framing was within the context of a religious project, which is like, we're going to go pray, but we're going to do this and it was like performative, as you said, versus, and I think cultivating more ways to think about what Jewish practice looks like and break away from sort of the Western Protestant notion that prayer is at the center of religiosity. So the fact that 929 has this website where you're encountering different voices about Tanakh, and it's like it's like a recreation or repetition or growth of the Jewish tradition, right? It's the multivocal tradition embodied in like more ways we do that.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, everybody. I love hearing this. And what I would appreciate is narrowing the focus in a certain way and diving deeper. And I'm going to use you, Josh, as your example of juxtaposing Heschel in sacred time and sacred space, and how somehow American religious leaders, other than Jews, feel very comfortable with that. And juxtaposing that with Ramban and everything in the tradition that says the most holy place, and even, Al Tavo, you don't enter the Holy of Holies except at the right time. So now I'm going to jump from that to Zionism. So we always have these broad things, the Rabbanut and secular marriages and all of this. I think it's time for us to take, I don't care if it's 3, 6, 1, 2, however many topics that we've been arguing about for 50 years or 70 years or who knows how long, and drill a little deeper and somehow create a page of Talmud that has something in the middle of it, and the way Shema does, and have the different voices, and have us learn on a site like 929, have a conversation, all of us having a conversation about these things that we seem to not be able to reconcile. By the way, somebody asked me about how do Arab citizens of Israel get married in Israel?
In the Muslim schools.
In the Muslim.
Rabbanut.
So
They're Rabbanut.
they're Rabbanut. Okay, so it's not just for Jews, but it's for, and Christians also?
Yeah.
They have the Christian.
Turkish.
You have to get married in a religiously way.
Okay.
It doesn't
I
matter
mean,
what
I knew
it is.
that
And
about
there's
Jews.
no interreligious.
I didn't know it about, yeah. But, so I'd like to hear you talk about which of those topics might those first things be, where we're going to pretend it's Heschel versus Ramban about holy space, holy time.
Okay, so I love that. So there's a great question. So if each of you had a chance to pick a very specific topic that we could drill down on and really start to pull apart, what would the topic be related to Israel and Zionism? I'll start the occupation.
So I think that creating a creative Jewish conversation can help a lot of those issues. So you said occupations. For me, it's okay. If we try to be a people, right, and we want to tap into our tradition and our wisdom, and to try to have that as a common language to talk about each one of those things, that would be the first thing I would do, to create a common language that is inspired and enhanced by our tradition
But you
and
don't mean
wisdom.
like Esperanto. You're not saying like actually create a language.
Sometimes it's actual language,
Okay.
but it's about, we are talking about so many issues that we cannot find common language around because we do speak different languages. So when an Israel, I don't like it when we say an Israeli. So before I was enlightened, for me talking about social justice issues, it was a very secular world. So I was active in different realms of social justice, but that was my Chiloni part, that was my liberal part, I didn't have any Jewish language to talk about social justice. American Judaism has created such a rich language about Jewish social justice. Some would criticize that and say that became the only thing in certain communities, maybe. But talking about social justice in a Jewish language, that is something that was developed here, and thank God, slowly things are starting to go back to Israel. But this is just one language, one example of how we could try to actually drill into these issues. But you said occupation, yes, of course, that's the burning issue, and we try to talk about other things, just not to talk about occupation. But if you talk about occupation through Jewish social justice language, there's a conversation, and it's a really, really, really important one. Let's talk about people from different religions cannot get married, people who are not a man and a woman from the same religion. If that's not the case, they cannot get married. Let's talk about that. We have a language for that. We have to develop it. We have to make sure we talk about that as a people. But that's like my first reaction to what you said.
Josh, I think what does it mean to be a light into the nations? Just from like radically different points. I think North Americans have a very different view than what Israelis. I think both major centers of Jewish life think they're doing that, and they're just doing it from very different positions.
So I see, again, I'm going to play off of Tova. And Tova said we should be able to have a conversation. I think the most important thing is to be able to realize that we can disagree and we can still be one people.
For me, the word is responsibility. Okay, and I love the word in Hebrew because in Hebrew it's achrayut, and there's the ach, like the brotherhood, and the acher, the other. Okay, and the achrayut is asking ourselves, what is the responsibility for my family? And I'm the one who's deciding who's your family, who's my family. Okay, if it's the Israeli society, if it's the Jewish society, but I know that there's my family and the others. But I have a responsibility for whoever the others will be. And I think that's the word I would go.
Well, we're almost out of time, so I just want to wrap it up this way. First of all, could we acknowledge this extraordinary panel? Just to, in terms of the methodology, I'll just invite you to consider something. When I said the word occupation, just reflect on how you felt in your stomach or what passed through your mind. And given these 4 powerful examples of a new methodology for engaging with Zionism in Israel, you'll be able to consider for yourself the extent to which you have taken on those 4 powerful teachings. And that can be a lesson for future conversations, right? Can you hear someone say something that either you agree with strongly and therefore you feel validated and you must be correct, or you disagree with strongly and now you dislike the person who said it, or somewhere in between, right? So whatever your response was to my saying that word will be indicative maybe of the work that we all have to do to advance this project. It's really just been a very special opportunity. In the Jewish tradition, when you eat food, there's always a blessing before and a blessing after. In the study of Torah, not so much, but I'll offer this one instead. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu, v'kiyimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Blessed is Adonai, our God, for giving us life, for giving us the extraordinary gift of hanging around here for a little bit, and for bringing us to this very moment. And let us say, Amen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.